A set of cinema lenses that covers a full range and is both affordable and has decent image quality is hard to come by. But finding this in a set of zooms that has a low distortion, wide angle option for Super 35 and is compact, sharp, and has enough character to keep you interested, now that's rare. Laowa just announced a Super 35 version of their Ranger set. It comes in an 11-18, a 17-50, and a 50-130 T2.9. In today's video, we're gonna be taking a closer look at the wide angle lens, the 11-18. Laowa was kind enough to send it over to me for review, and I've had the chance to use it on a few jobs and shoots and test it out over the last few weeks. So in today's video, we're gonna be taking a closer look at this lens and also trying to take a look at if this lens is something that I would recommend for your next job, who's this lens for, and what sets it apart, both good and bad. All right, let's dive in. For those of you that are new around here, my name's Riley, and I'm a filmmaker who's produced documentaries on multiple continents around the world using the gear that I talk about on this channel. So if you're someone who's into making documentaries or films with small crews, then you're in the right place. Consider subscribing and following along. All right, back to the video. Cine lenses offer several advantages over photo lenses, and the 11-18 from Laowa is no exception. Its ergonomics and optics are built for video and film production. It's parfocal, it doesn't breathe, and it's fully manual with geared rings to give you as the operator the ability to work solo or rigged up with a crew. And all of these add up to a significant quality of life improvement on set. Like other high-end cine lenses, this wide angle from Laowa doesn't rely on an in-camera profile to correct optical flaws. It doesn't have much distortion even at an impressively wide 11 millimeters. Lines don't really bend or curve, as you can see here. And I'm also happy to report that even at 11 millimeters, it covers the full width of the Red Komodo, which has a slightly larger than normal Super 35 sensor. There's very little vignetting even at the 6K 17:9 format. The lens is sharp and detailed, and chromatic aberration is well controlled. It comes in mirrorless mounts and has the smarter long-term investment options of PL and EF to work across multiple camera systems, assuming that they're Super 35. Optically, this lens is super impressive. It's also really impressive in terms of the sharpness, even wide open at T2.9. I don't have like a lens chart to do any sort of scientific test, but looking at the footage in 6K on my Red Komodo, pixel peeping zoomed in, there is a lot of detail in the lens, and it also has a good amount of contrast and kind of snappiness with the colors. So overall, I'm really impressed with how well this lens performs, and especially for a wide angle zoom lens, it's definitely something that I can see myself using a lot. So what are my overall impressions of using this lens? Well, I would say they're really, really positive. I would describe this lens as being clean, but not necessarily like clinical and stale. It's clean in the fact that from what I can tell, it's sharp corner to corner, even at something that's super wide. It's not gonna have a bunch of distortion, and I think overall, it's gonna be a really reliable wide angle lens, but I wouldn't use the word clinical in the sense that it's like a stale looking lens, because I do think it has some fun and tasteful character when it comes to flaring the lens. Now, the lens is going to flare if that's something that you're looking for, and depending on your shooting scenarios, you might need to use like a matte box or some sort of flag or hood to control the flares if you really don't want any flares at all. What I appreciate is that the flares don't seem to kind of wash out the image or kind of negatively take away from it. It's something that if I want to go for like a clean corporate look, then I definitely have the ability to do that. But if I'm filming a subject in a backlit environment, I can find, you know, that kind of gorgeous, beautiful flare over their back shoulder if that's something that I want as well. There isn't a ton of character in the bokeh, but a lens this wide won't have much bokeh anyways. It's so wide that it's going to have a deep depth of field most of the time, and given the scenarios a super wide angle like this will be used, landscapes, interior establishing shots, gimbal or car mounted work, board sports like skateboarding or skimboarding, real estate, and so on, I think having a clean, sharp look with the option for some beautiful flares on occasion means that this lens is going to perform well exactly in the situations that it's supposed to. So what sets this lens apart from other cinema zooms? Well, I think it really is going to come down to the quality, which is really good, the size, and the price. The size and weight of this lens also creates some additional flexibility and functionality that you won't often see on cinema zoom lenses. It's just under 2 pounds and right around 4 inches long, so it's going to be about the same size as the Sigma 18-35. I think this is going to result in the ability to use it in more scenarios, like gimbals, being mounted and rigged in interesting spots, and it's also just going to draw less attention to you as a shooter and operator when you're using a lens like this in an uncontrolled environment. For me, doing a lot of dock work, this is really nice because I get all of the quality of life and optical improvements that a cinema zoom lens can bring, but in the size and profile of a normal mirrorless or DSLR sized lens. So if I'm filming in downtown Seattle or I'm filming overseas in another country, and depending on the video camera that I am shooting with in those scenarios, whether it's a small red Komodo or a Sony FX30, having a pretty compact camera package can definitely be a lot less distracting and draw less attention to myself. Having a small camera body with a 4-inch lens attached to it has a different feel than having a decently big camera body with like a 7 or 8-inch lens attached to it. For dock work, it just is going to mean that I'm able to shoot longer because I'll be less tired, and I'm also going to be able to be a little bit more inconspicuous and get better shots from my subjects because there aren't people who are giving us funny looks if I'm able to kind of blend in the background. So I've spent the majority of this video gushing about how much I really enjoy this lens, but what are some potential cons or quirks with the lens? Well, I think that the most obvious one is going to be the fact that it's a pretty limited zoom range at 11 to 18 millimeters. So you're not going to be able to go to like 22 or 25 and get a little bit more of a compressed look. You're going to be at the wide end of a really wide zoom lens, and so you're going to have to choose to want to go for that look and aesthetic. And I really do enjoy the wide angle look, and it's why when Laowa asked me which one I wanted to review, I said I wanted to review the 11 to 18, but it is going to be roughly the equivalent of like a 16 to 24 millimeter ish lens on a full frame equivalent. The other quirk that I found out when shooting with this lens is it does have a 77 millimeter filter ring, so you can screw on like a variable ND filter or a mist filter or whatever you want to screw on to the 77 millimeter filter thread. But one thing that I noticed when I was filming with it and I screwed on a Tiffin variable ND filter, so like a pretty standard sized variable ND filter, when I was at the wide end of this lens on my red Komodo, I could definitely see the corners of that ND filter in the frame. And so I think that the culprit on this is the fact that the red Komodo's sensor is larger than Super 35, and so it's going to have like a wider, larger field of view in the 6K mode. And now the lens performs well in terms of like distortion and vignetting with that extra field of view. But when I screwed on that ND filter onto this lens, you can see that it really like vignetted hard. And so I had to zoom into about 14 millimeters to get rid of this in the full 6K 17:9 mode on the Komodo. But when I punched into the 5K crop mode on the Komodo to get a little bit of extra, frame rates and some slower slow motion, that went away completely. And I think this 5K crop mode is probably closer to most Super 35 sized sensors. And so even at 11 millimeters in that 5K crop mode, I was not seeing, the into the corner of the frame with that variable ND filter. So I think if you are a Komodo user and you are planning on using this lens in 6K 17:9, like I will probably do often, I think what you're gonna have to do is look into some sort of rear filtration system with this lens. So, like a PL to RF adapter that can take a variable ND filter, or just using like a low profile matte box that can have just a drop-in, 4x5.6 filter. That again, the matte box can't be like real deep and bulky, because if it is at 11mm on the Komodo, you're probably gonna see, the corner of that matte box. The lens performs well when it comes to chromatic aberration. There is a very minimal amount. I think that in certain like extreme high contrast backlit scenarios, if you zoom in and pixel peep, you can find a tiny bit of it. But again, this is super well controlled, and I don't think you're really gonna notice it unless you're looking for it. So who do I think this lens is for, and is it something that I would personally recommend? Well, I think it's gonna be for anyone that is using a camera with a Super 35 size sensor and is looking to take advantage of some of the quality of life advantages that using a lens like this creates. So if you're someone that uses a Red Komodo, a Komodo X, a Canon C70, a Blackmagic, or like a Sony FX30, or even an FS5 or FS7, then I think this lens is gonna be an excellent wide angle option. It's gonna give you the quality of life improvements that you're potentially looking for, and it's gonna have really good optical quality. It's lightweight, it's compact, it has really good image quality, it has fun, tasteful flares that I enjoy and are gonna be something that I look for, and it's also something that I can use on multiple cameras. Now, this is something that I've really enjoyed having in my kit, and it's something that I could see having a place there for a long time. It's also something that has really piqued my interest with Laowa's other lenses, and is something that I plan on checking out in the future as well. Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are on the Laowa Ranger Super 35 set. All right, I'll catch you guys in the next one.